Welcome back to another episode of the Realness Meets Logic podcast, an authentic space for logic. Man, it feels good to be back. Went on a little hiatus, lived a little bit of life, got some more experiences so we can bring some fresh content and some fresh perspectives to this amazing platform. All right, this is episode 5. The episode is titled The Hallway. Now, before I get into this, I want to preface it first. The hallway, you know how you have the saying of one door closing for another one to open? That's a very true saying. However, we don't talk enough about the in-between and what happens in between the closed door that just closed and the open door that you're waiting to walk into. The hallway. We're going to talk about it. Starting with the closed door. So when you have a closed door in your life, whether that's work, family relationships, romantic relationships, whatever the case may be, it's either two things happening. It's either you are willingly choosing to leave whatever that thing is, or you're being forced or pushed to leave whatever that thing is, to where it's out of your control. And when that happens, at that point, you're in the hallway. You close that door. Excuse the background noise if you hear that. But you closed one door, right? Some doors open right away. But there are times, a lot of times actually, where that door doesn't open right away. And you're in the hallway between that closed door and that open door. And wondering, what do I do with myself? Figuring out what's the next move. How should I show up? Where should I go from here? That's always a hard part. That's always the difficult part. That's always the challenge. Especially when it's when you did not choose to leave that situation, but you were pushed by God, the universe, or whatever higher power you believe in to be in this weird, uncomfortable space of not knowing and not having that stability, that expected whatever it is, whether that's love or income or whatever the case may be, not having that expected, stable, whatever that is you are receiving, that you're not anymore. It can be hard. This is the place where you're relearning yourself, paying attention and reflecting on who you were in that situation that you had to leave, and being intentional with who you are now and how that situation has shaped you, and then being intentional with how you're going to move forward and who you're going to become moving forward. And then after you're done relearning yourself, I won't even say done because it's such a continuous process. It's going to be continued. It's going to be ongoing. We are forever relearning ourselves. But the next part of being in the hallway between that closed door and that next opened opportunity is reforming the foundation. Whatever your foundation was or whatever you believe it is, this is the time where we reform our foundation. Make certain parts of the foundation a little bit stronger. Rather, that's you figuring out a little bit more about you and who you are as a person. That making that a part of your foundation. Because whatever that situation was that you had to leave, whether willingly or unwillingly, you made that a part of your foundation. But now that that's no longer the case, you have to strategize. You have to assess and reassess and scan all the different parts of your foundation. Make sure that there's no weak points. Rather that's going to therapy to make sure that you are emotionally stable and prepared for this next opportunity, this next opened door. Or it could be you just tapping in with yourself, going new places. And we're going to touch on that in a little bit later in this episode. But reforming the foundation, the thoughts of what that foundation is, how does it look? Is how it is currently looking, is that how it should look to get you to that next level? Being honest with ourselves. All right? Then we have to make the necessary adjustments. Again, this could be personal, professional, rather that's changing your wardrobe up a little bit to prepare for the opportunity that you want to attract. We're going to touch on that a little bit later in this episode. Or that could be, again, you working more with the personal, making sure you're emotionally stable, making sure that you are being there for yourself, making sure you're pouring into yourself, because you can't pour into an empty cup. And sometimes God, the universe, or whoever you believe in, puts us in that hallway so that we can develop ourselves, shape ourselves into the person that we are meant to become. Into the person that we are meant to become, because that other place or person that we were aligned with at that time is no longer aligned with us now. And that's okay. It was time for a release. And now that we're in that hallway, in between that closed door and that soon to be opened door, we are in a space of development, character building, world shaping. This is the space to figure things out that you didn't have the time to really lean into and figure out when you were in whatever situation you were in. The next thing is redefining your why and then reaffirming your goals. Whenever we have that weird, uncomfortable space in life where we don't know where we're going and we had it figured out when we was in this stable situation, but now that it's not so stable and not so expected, it's so unpredictable now. It's not as predictable as it used to be. It's not as stable as it used to be. It's not as dependable or reliable as it used to be, because we no longer have whatever gave us that sense of security, that sense of identity, that sense of that version of a purpose that was aligned specifically for that situation, because that purpose was for that. But you still have a overarching purpose overall for who you are that's in you, because that is in you. It's not on you. It cannot be put on you and it cannot be taken off of you, because it's in you. It's in you. It's not on you. It cannot be removed and it cannot be applied. All right. So redefining our why. That's when we get back into the purpose. Okay, now that I'm no longer in that situation, my why was looking pretty good when I was in that situation with that person or with that place or whatever the case may be. But now that I no longer have that and my why was attached to that person, place, or thing, now that that's gone, what is the why outside of that place or person or thing that is no longer aligned with where we are now? What is that why? We are redefining that. We are refining that and we are refinding that. All right. And then reaffirming your goals. Not only are we reassessing and taking a deeper look at what our why is, but we are also looking at our goals and making sure that those goals are still something that we want, and making sure that those goals are still a part of our purpose, a part of our why. That's why it's important to redefine the why first and then reaffirm the goals so that you can remind yourself of what you're aiming for. Even if what you were aiming for was specific to that person, place, or thing that you were connected to at that time, that was aligned with you at that time, that is no longer in alignment now, what are those goals now? The goals that are not dependent on a person, place, or thing outside of you. The goals that will always remain, no matter where you go, who you're around, who you're with, whatever. What are those goals? Take a sip of this water. Talking this real talk gets me a little thirsty. All right. So, now that we talked about that, we also want to get into leaning on our support circles. So when we are in the hallway, in between that closed door and that open door for potential opportunity, we can be down on ourselves. We could be down in the dumps. We could be in a little slump, maybe even slightly depressed and going through some things internally, and it bleeds out externally. Some people around us that care for us can see that and lean into us in a loving way and intervene in a positive way because they can see the person that you are that you forgot you are. They can see the person that you are blinded to see, that you can't see right now because you're in it. You're in the hallway. They can see you. One, you can never truly know what you're in until you're out of it, or until someone from out of whatever that situation is looks from the outside in and lets you know what they see from the outside looking in, because it's hard to see how great you are and to see who you are when you are in this slump. You're in this hallway. You need someone on the other end of that hallway to tell you, to remind you who you are. That's why it's so important to have good people around you and to have a support circle, a support network, people that genuinely want your best interest at heart, who knows who you are, who you were, how great you used to be, how great you are, and how great that you can be. You need people like that, because sometimes we get lost in our own heads, lost in our own world, lost in our own chaos, lost in our own depression, lost in our own negative feelings and views of how we look at ourselves. Because of all these things that's going on that we are attaching to our self-worth and self-value and overall identity in how we show up in the world and with others. And that's when people need people. That's when it's great for someone on the outside looking in to tell you what they see when they look at you. Not because you just this overly dependent person who cares overly about what people think. No, people need people, and you're not going to always have it together. We need each other. We lean on each other. That's why when some people get certain addictions, they go to these addiction counseling meetings and they go to these different gatherings with other people who are either on the same level as them when it comes to that addiction, or they overcame that addiction and they're able to reach towards you and help pull you up to that level because they see that greatness in you and they see that potential of where you can go. And they're not just looking at where you currently are. And even where you are, they can still see the greatness in that. That's when even the most self-sufficient person needs somebody outside of them to give them at least a perspective, a different view that has nothing to do with the depression, the feelings of failure, and just overall disappointment that that person is going through mentally day in and day out. That's when you need people to pull you out of that. All right, we're not going to have this episode be too long, but our last point is preparing for the opened door. Now, what does that look like? You have this time to redevelop yourself, redefine your why, reaffirm your goals, reaffirm yourself, reform, and reassess and scan your foundation to make sure all your pieces are in the right places to get to where you need to go. Now we're going to talk about preparing for that open door. What does that look like, huh? Building habits and hobbies that lean towards the person you want to be and the opportunities that align with that. Finding new things to do. You have some homework or you have whatever you have to do productively. Get out the house, go to a cafe, go to a coffee shop. Go find other things you can do to get out the house that you actually enjoy. Someone told me, I'm going to be real, my grandma, shout out my grandma. My grandma told me, that I should find places that actually align with who I am. Like getting out of the house because I have this greatness in me, this potential. And I be looking good and stuff, and it's okay to be seen, in the right spaces. Nothing wrong with that. We gonna keep it real. This is realness meets logic, baby. All right. So not to drag it out too long, but wrapping it up. She told me that I should find places to go where it's not somewhere that I have to be at, but find places where I would want to be at. And I could still be productive and feel good about myself and be building onto these building blocks of the life that I want for myself. Because it's one brick at a time. Rome was not built in a day. It was built over what? Time. All right. That is the end of this episode, The Hallway. And hopefully this will help you get to the other side of yours. Follow us on Instagram at realness_meets_logic podcast. And it's going to be the same thing on TikTok, realness_meets_logic podcast. And just tap in with us, stay tuned in, and hopefully you could join me on this journey as I am giving this perspective and sharing it with you. All right? It's your host, Avrion, signing off.